There's an old saying, where do you find oil and gas? Right next to where they already found it.
In the oil business, there are two ways to make money. One is you bring an old idea into a new area, ultra deep water, okay? Second way is you bring a new idea into an old area. That's what happened in the Permian. One of my sort of favorite things about the Permian is you have parts of the Permian that are suddenly churning out some very exciting wells, and they're the parts that everybody just left for dead, okay? And what happened? You had some person who's been working it for 40 years, and they said, hey, you know what? Maybe I can take that horizontal well thing and go ahead and drill it in this conventional reservoir and get something big.
As we look at basins, especially a basin like the Permian Basin, which has so many prolific reservoirs in it, we're getting very detailed as we go through the vintages of data, from the stuff that was gathered in the 50s, the work that was done in the 60s, and the work that's done through the 70s, going back to drawing the cross-section on the wall with wells that are 25 miles apart and putting the geological picture together across basins and stuff, and trying to get how the basin was constructed and how the oil migrated and things like that. There's nostalgia for what those geoscientists and engineers did with very little data.
You have people that have that kind of vision, right? And that comes from, understanding what's out there and seeing things in the data that maybe other people didn't see.
As things went from paper to digital, and we got the ability to bring the different data disciplines together, engineering, drilling, production, geology, geophysics, it's been an exponential growth in the past 10 years.
Having an idea of what the subsurface looks like from a reservoir quality standpoint, and also understanding which horizontals are targeting those reservoirs, and being able to tie that in with production and with our various well data attributes, completion size, lateral length, we're able to understand better where the sweet spots are, why they exist, how much running room there is.
When you start taking that stuff from the engineering and geology stuff, and then you start applying financials to it, then you can really start looking at better prospecting in different areas.
I do a lot more mapping and interpretation work, and then tying all again in with the more quantitative production numbers, economic data, so break-evens, net present value, trying to rank plays, trying to rank operators within the plays, trying to rank different areas of the plays into more high-graded areas versus low-graded areas, so to speak, using different benchmarking metrics. We look at a horizontal well's performance. We take the peak productivity, so peak rate within the first 4 months of that well's life, and we normalize it to 1,000 lateral feet because over the past few years, lateral lengths have continued to extend beyond the limits that we once thought were the limits, all the way up to 12,000, 13,000, 16,000 feet. And we use these quintiles to essentially identify areas in a play or in a region or in a basin that are the sweet spots, or just areas that will produce the most volumes, be the most economic areas for the operators.
The future is trying to get real effective information that's going to affect the bottom line. We want to look for the future, but we have to watch where the next step we're taking in front of us.
When I think about data today and how people are using it to try to advance themselves in the Permian, I think there are two things that are happening today. One is that people need smart data. So you need data that's not just raw data, and it's not even just clean data, but I need to get data from data. I need to run algorithms on this thing so I can categorize things, put things in buckets, normalize things, and really create a whole new set of data over and above the raw data that's collected. That's what people often like to use. The second thing that I think is important is to be able to intersect the vendor data from all the different places with the proprietary data. So we need to take that, because that's where the magic happens a lot of times, is not only take smart data, but take data from a bunch of different sources and be able to integrate it. So I can see the pipeline data, I can see the company transaction data, I can see where the rigs are, some of the completion data, and how people really used chemicals to try to enhance this.
So I think we're at an inflection point in the industry, whereas a lot of the past developments have been around kind of core E&P technologies, new completion technologies, new bits, new drilling technologies. One of the things that we're seeing is this increasing shift towards the emphasis on digitalization. And I think that kind of really begins to build upon the data that the industry has begun to build up, and really some of the advances, both being able to improve performance, reduce downtime. It's really the focus on all of these elements of digitalization.
I think the magic really happens at the intersection of those two things. When you put together real expertise, deep expertise with the data. Because otherwise it seems to me problematic, right? The data can go off and create all sorts of great data things, but if it's uninformed by the human intelligence and the understanding, it doesn't do much. On the other hand, human intelligence can't work fast enough and work efficiently enough in the absence of real advanced data tools.
But it's really being able to identify how things that are happening, being able to better predict them and to avoid them in the future, but also really beginning to optimize across a broad swath as well. And whether that's around kind of field development and understanding what the best way is to develop a given resource, and that's kind of vertically as well as horizontally. It's basically being able to understand what are the implications or decisions that you make during the drilling and the well construction phase and the completion phase, and what are the implications for the overall productivity and kind of the value of the well. So what are the implications for all of this? One of the things that we begin to see are what are the new business models and operating models that are beginning to emerge. And you think about the efficiency and what's being driven, you think about the digital and kind of the optimization, we see increasingly the kind of the Uberization. Whereas right now there may be a kind of direct contract. What's to stop a company that's either oil hauling or water hauling to basically act like an Uber, and that basically a service on demand, where you begin to qualify a certain number of vendors, and then on an as-needed basis you kind of call them out rather than having a fixed contract. The Permian is an absolute opportunity there, especially as you kind of get into the level of activity that's going to be ramping up there, and the constraints that are put on, whether it's the number of service companies or the transportation venues, that being able to optimize that as best as possible is going to be critical.
The industry is changing. Other industries' stuff is coming into our industry. The amount of data and stuff to clarify the picture, to make it higher fidelity picture so we can extract more hydrocarbons faster, cheaper, more environmentally sound.
In the current phase of the shale environment, we're producing 9, 10, maybe 11 or 12. So we're leaving down there 88%, of the oil. Somebody, some way, somehow, sometime, may figure out a way to get another 10% of that. And when they do, if they do, it will be a third wind for the Permian. And the Permian could very well be last man standing as we move toward a future of different energy sources, but it'll be around for a very long time.